Welcome to the Bold Lounge podcast. My name is Lee Burgess, and I will be your host. If you're anything like me, you love hearing inspiring stories of people who have gone on bold journeys and made a positive impact in the world. This podcast is all about those kinds of stories. Every week, we'll hear from someone who has taken a leap or embarked on an extraordinary journey. In addition to hearing their stories, we'll also learn about their bold growth mindset that they use to make things happen. Whether they faced challenges or doubts along the way, they persisted and ultimately achieved their goals. These impactful stories will leave you feeling motivated and inspired to pursue your own bold journey. I believe everyone has a bold story waiting to be freed. Tune in and get ready to be inspired. Welcome to the Bold Lounge. Today, I'm so excited to have multiple people in the lounge today, and it is the Young Chief Coalition. Welcome.
Thank you, Lee.
So I thought it would be great for you to each do an introduction for the listeners. So we'll start with Catherine.
Sure. I'm Catherine Gregor. I'm the Chief Clinical Trial Officer for Florence Healthcare, which is a software provider operating in the e-clinical space. My background is the last 2 decades. I ran clinical trials at community centers and academic health centers, and most recently was the head of clinical trials at the Vanderbilt Ingram Cancer Center.
Excellent. And Lucy.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lee. I'm a risk management executive. I know some people have problem understanding, so that's why I call it financial executive, since I have been working in the financial world for the past 20-something years. And so I have involved in multiple areas, but most recently is financial industry and fintech. So currently I work for Mosaic as a solar lending renewable energy platform. Also, I'm a coach. Thank you.
All right, Lisa.
Thank you, Lee. My name is Lisa Eyer. I'm currently a VP for client success working for Concero Global, which is a finance as a service company. Prior to that, worked for just 2 major corporations, financial services industries, and payments. So about 25 years collectively across, 3 major companies in my career.
Excellent. Bridgette?
Hi, everyone. I'm Bridgette Smith. I'm a former Google executive based here in Silicon Valley. I'm currently working on a new tech startup, as well as doing lots and lots of investing into startup companies who are founded by women, Black, Latin American, Asian, or LGBTQ. In addition to that, I do a lot of board service across the spectrum for private, public, and nonprofit boards.
Excellent. So Sheana?
Great. Thank you, Lee. My name is Sheana Hamil, and I was most recently the SVP of marketing at a tech company. I'm currently in transition in the B2B SaaS marketing space. I've worked in industries such as energy, manufacturing, financial services, and most recently, aerospace and defense.
Mai, could you tell us a little bit about your background?
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. My name is Mai Moore, and I am a social impact leader, and I am a human. And from the business side, for the last 9 years, I was co-founder to a social impact nonprofit, EYEJ, Empowering Youth Exploring Justice, where we empower young advocates for change. So literally teaching young people how to be a change maker. How do you actually create change, including doing some award-winning work in programming, social action, building policy, things like that. And then before that, I was actually in the tech industry. So I helped 5 successful tech companies in the area of marketing and directly helped 2 of them go public, which was Travelzoo and United Airlines. So I've had a really amazing and very different type of a career. And a little bit more personally, I'm a woman. My grandmother was a Japanese green tea ceremony teacher. And then my mom actually left at age 13 from Japan to become a violinist. And so she was 34 years assistant concertmaster in the Cleveland Orchestra. And I have an 18-year-old daughter who is a freshman in college studying international studies.
Excellent. So it sounds like a lineage of bold there. Lots of boldness in your family.
Yes.
And I'll just end with this a short thing around me. Most of my career, I was in healthcare for over 20 years. And in 2020, I started my own S Corp, which really is based around 3 C's, which is consulting, coaching, and curated events. Still continuing to work across academics, biotech, and biopharma, and other businesses. So thank you for all the chiefs and coming together. I think what I'd like to do as we start off is just, as I normally do, ask about what your definition of bold is. So when you think about being bold and you hear that word, what does that word mean to you?
To me, bold means that I'm aware there is a danger or uncertainty, and I still go ahead and take an action for the things that I stand by. And I think that I'm right.
Okay. How about you, Catherine? What does bold look like in your world?
I like Lucy's definition. I too like to think it means I'm right. For me, bold is very similar, right? Like taking risk, being decisive, and knowing that sometimes it's going to err on the side of unlikability, right? And it's really what's in the best interest in pushing through adversity to result in a positive outcome.
So when you think about the first time you were bold, Catherine, what comes to mind based on your definition?
There's so many. I think most recently, I'll stick with recent. We can go back to childhood. There's some good stories from there too. Most recently, I decided to leave academia and healthcare in the provider sense and the administration and clinical trials and move into software, right? Like, what's that? That's weird. And so that was a choice that I made intentionally, knowing that it was going to be a stretch for me. It was something that I thought was going to help the company that I was joining and that I was the customer that they were targeting. So why wouldn't they want that perspective while they're developing? And it's a risk, right? It could go completely wrong and I could be back at the doorstep of the hospital I worked at begging for a job tomorrow. But luckily so far it's working out for me.
Yeah, you can always go back. From that perspective, in the sense of maybe not back to that institution, but you could always go back into that particular way of work or the field that you were in. So I think trying something new, you can always, in the sense of, where you were, and there's always that opportunity. And there's always, I think, when it comes to being bold, some sense of unknown in that.
Right.
How about you, Sheana?
Yeah, so very similar to what Catherine and Lucy said, I define bold as being courageous to act, doing something that's outside of your comfort zone, doing those hard things, and taking those calculated risks.
Yeah. Okay. Bridgette?
Sure. I wrote down 3 things. I wrote down being authentic, being confident, and being unapologetic. So for me, those are 3 threads that are consistent. Once I found my voice and I refused to let go of my voice, those 3 things are consistent from every job I've ever had. I show up as me every day. I can't change my color. I can't change my gender. I can't change the fact that I'm very curious. I want to learn. I want to grow, and I want to invest in myself. So that's consistent. The confidence comes from probably well before I even got into corporate America. It came from my mom, right? My mom was just very clear that education was the only way that we would change our circumstances. And I came from very humble beginnings. So that confidence was instilled in me very early on. And then being unapologetic is basically what I say is what I say, right? I think before I speak. I think before I act. I pray before I do anything. And then when I execute, the results are the results that were as a result of what I put into it. So those 3 things are pretty consistent for me.
Excellent. Mai, could you tell us what your definition of bold is?
My definition of bold is being fearless. And in order to be fearless, I think you have to really get to know people. You have to really listen. You have to be aware, and you have to practice having that courage. And then that boldness will come through, in my opinion.
That's a great definition. And in your opinion, when you say kind of getting through the fear so that you can have the courage, what are some of the things that help you do that?
Life. I think you mentioned this earlier, and a couple of my cohort mentioned, life is not necessarily a straight line. I mean, you will be hit with very different occurrences that happen in your life. For example, my ex-husband passed away last year at age 43. And I think to answer that, I think experience really helps with the boldness and how you handle those tough situations. And like I mentioned earlier, practice. So sometimes you may not get it right the first time, but keep going and really looking out for yourself too. I think you mentioned, or mentioned about following your dreams. Those dreams are amazing because they remind you, right? They remind you of your worth. They remind you of who you are and what you want in life. And so staying on track and keeping focus, I think, is really key. And being bold is a key element to get you to where you want to go.
Yeah, for sure. Those are great, great tips. And Lisa, what's your definition look like? Any differences? Anything stand out for you?
Sometimes what links us all together as being bold is being willing to run into the proverbial burning building when no one else wants to solve the problems and, jump in and do something new.
Yeah, I call that jumping into the deep end with floaties on. Like, you know it's going to be tough, but you're going to survive it. And sometimes there's just, for me, I think excitement in solving something like that. In my career, I've jumped into a couple of those for sure. And Lucy, what's the first time you remember being bold based on your definition?
There are so many stories in my childhood. I was being naughty and very bold. I'm not the regular kind of very quiet girl when I grow up. So that's why I had 3 bone fractures when I was little. But I don't want to mention about all of it because you could define them as, okay, being naughty. So one thing that I can think of it was when I was 15 on a trip to a different city, because I grew up in Beijing, China. And so my mom and I, along with a bunch of adults that we visit, or some families would visit a different city. And one day, the driver who's kind of accompanying us and said, okay, something wrong with the car. So we changed the vacation plan, but we need to contact each one of the families. And there was one senior lady, she was not able to come with us in the morning because she's tired. This is on the 2nd week or something. And so everyone scratched their head and said, hey, how can we contact her? Is there a way? And to me, it was, even though 15, the culture is different. Is when it's not my position to speak, I shouldn't speak, especially in front of adults. If I speak up my ideas, I could be really scolded and to say, hey, you're rude, or why you are chiming in, right? So, the culture is that way. So I didn't want to say anything, but I thought about, okay, my door was 15. So it's along the whole hallway, there sequence, right? Number is sequence. And also I recall that the phone number in my unit was ending with 15. That means that lady that's staying in the hotel, I wouldn't call it a hotel, but like a complex. So she was 3 doors away from us. So it could be that her was 18 and then the ending phone number was 18. I couldn't hold off of my urge. So I raised my hand. I said, by the way, if you want to contact her, maybe call her room. And they said, oh, we don't know her phone number. And I said, how about try this number? They were thinking that I'm out of my mind, but I insisted. I said, try it and see what's going on. So they tried, and that lady answered. I was like, oh my goodness, what a relief. Otherwise, I could be judged. And my mom would say, hey, it's none of your business. Don't say something, right? And I went and said, oh, okay, you're a smart girl. So they let it go. But I feel that I'm so encouraged. The thing is, I wasn't so certain, right? I could be put myself under the spotlight saying, hey, I shouldn't say something, but I did it. I thought that I'm doing the right way. And I turned out, luckily, right? I turned out. So that thing that really, when I think of it, it's encouraging me to continue to speak up in any situation. So even though there's not a danger, but uncertainty.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a danger, but it can be standing up for someone. It could be speaking up for those that don't have a voice. I think there's bold moments that are invited and there's bold moments that are uninvited. And I think being bold means you're going to do it regardless, right? So it's really making sure you're aligned. So it sounds like that was also an encouraging moment for you to kind of keep going too and be able to be part of a conversation and be able to add your voice to it. So it's so important.
Exactly.
Mike, what comes to mind?
I've definitely had a couple of those amazing moments. I think a great example was when I started EYEJ. First of all, I never expected in a million years to be serving youth, to start a nonprofit, or have anything to do with social justice. That was not in my plan at all. But I saw, I had an amazing career beforehand, and I saw the need, and I felt like it was my time to give back. And I felt like, really assessing, like, what are my skills here, right? I love corralling people. I love bringing people together. I love diversity. I love to empower people, right? And I am great. I love business. I love entrepreneurship. So the Trayvon Martin ruling had happened on a Friday. On Sunday, I was at church. I was talking to an elder member, a very prestigious woman who was, in the education field. And we were just talking about the situation, and it just really, it bothered me. Like I wasn't feeling settled, and I felt like I needed to do something, and that ignited me, right? So you get those moments that really cause this disruption in like this urge of really wanting to do something. So I wanted to help. And I think the other thing too is, I'm from Cleveland, and there's 27,000 nonprofits here. It can be at times very divided. And I think what was boggling my mind is, why are there youth who are still underserved and still in the situations that they are? Like it just didn't, there was a missing connection with impact, right? Between this world of nonprofits and where the youth, and still to this day. So I love to be that connector. I love to be that middleman and try to bridge and try to help to make better impact. But I would say that was my bold movement, because I didn't have any experience in nonprofit. Like, I had to really learn. And I didn't realize how hard it is. I was in the tech industry, so I was like, I got this, like I've been part of some amazing things, right? But the truth is that nonprofits imagine an entrepreneurial endeavor, and you're dealing with human lives, and you're dealing with social justice in a smaller town. Whoa. I did not know what I was getting myself into, but I did it. I did it, and I made impact. Obviously it comes with a lot of struggle and a lot of sacrifice and a lot of pain. I've seen a lot, but I knew that I was doing something. I knew that I was changing culture. I knew I was helping people. I knew I was bridging better understanding, and really just seeing the smiles on young people is what really truly like made me want to do that.
All right. Thank you. Bridgette?
The one example I can just think of is when I was venturing into journalism. That was, and still is, my first love, is telling stories and sharing stories about people and connecting with people and being relatable. I love to do that. And so when I started in journalism, I remember telling one person what my dream was. And I didn't know that person was going to be a dream killer when I told him. But he was like, he looked at me and he said, he just was like, he didn't believe me. He didn't encourage me. He didn't support me. I was crushed. And I was super young at the time too. So I'll just say that. So maybe it was just, he was immature, but I wasn't. And I knew what I wanted. So I signed up for journalism school. I went to the classes. I signed up for every single special project I could so I could figure out this space that I loved, but I didn't quite know how to do the craft. And eventually I got on not just university television, but network television. Eventually, I began hosting talk shows. Eventually, I began producing my own shows. But I learned early on to just keep my dreams to myself until I met people who were like-minded like me, like the women in chief, the women where I felt psychologically safe to share my boldness out loud. And so that's kind of just one example of being bold. And so now I dream out loud. I still pursue the things that make me happy, and I'm unapologetic, I'm authentic, and I'm confident with everything I touch, because nobody can do it the way Lee can. Nobody can do it the way Bridgette can, right? So it's just a matter of owning whatever it is that I'm pursuing, being bold about it, and just not allowing other people's ideas or defining who I am, let that seep into my consciousness, because how they feel about me is not how I feel about me.
Yeah. So keeping your dreams close, right? So I think the tip here is continue to dream out loud, but make sure you're, I think in a way, careful of who you share it with, because not everyone belongs on that inner circle of your dream. And sometimes they cause harm not even knowing that they're doing it. So keeping your dreams close, but continuing to dream, I think, is the big tip here. So when we think about young women who are early in their career and early in schooling and trying to think about their bold moves, to be where you are today in your career, what are some of the things that come to mind that were bold connected to your journey in your career now? So what's interesting is, like, if I think about what, I went to school, I'm still primarily in the same area of what I went to school for, but it looks very, very different now being an entrepreneur and running my own company compared to how it looked when I was in academia. And how I got here was definitely not a straight line, but I had in mind that it was going to be. So I think sometimes it's helpful just to hear about people's journey to this point. And I'd be interested in kind of hearing about yours and how you got to this point in your career. And what's a good tip that you'd want to pass along to someone who is maybe in that same phase of figuring it out or wondering what may be their next move? How about we start with you, Lisa?
Thanks, Lee. So my career was definitely not a straight line either. So when you think about bold moves, I was a single mom that decided to work a couple of jobs at the same time to stay in college and raise my child. And that really led to, how do I get that first big job? I remember applying for jobs and being told I just did not have enough experience. And so there was a major financial institution in the area. So I said, how could I get a job here? And they said, well, we would only hire through a temporary service, So I went and I got a job at the temporary service. So I said, how do I get at that financial institution? And they said, well, you're going to need to work. We need to see some of your experience and how you do. And then, we could get you placed. I worked a couple of jobs. I did well. I went back and I said, how do I get into that financial institution now? So they placed me. It was a temporary job to start with, an executive admin position, but it put my foot in the door. And then the rest was up to me at that point to really do the best job I could in that position, and then get selected to come on full time and do the next job to the best of my ability. And I did that for almost 10 years for that company, moving around, doing things that made me very uncomfortable that I had never done before, but continually looking for opportunities. And, from there, taking a leap of faith and all over in another company and working and, all around the business to learn it, and constantly, keeping that mindset of how do I work myself out of this position so that I can get a successor into that role and I can go do something different. And so, my advice I would give to someone in college, early in their career is the same advice that I would have given to my daughters, which is get uncomfortable. Don't be afraid. Go network, go to events. I think as women, we often try to travel in groups. We're more comfortable walking into a room sometimes with others. But if you can get uncomfortable and you can be willing to go do something completely on your own, you'll get more comfortable with that. And going sideways means you're going to expand your career in ways that you might not have the opportunity if you just start to think, I have to go up instead of across.
Yeah. So the tip is to get uncomfortable, and you might do that the rest of your life as you're learning, right? So it's not like there's a comfort zone, I think, that we get into. I think we continue to kind of get uncomfortable, get in that place, because usually everyone's heard the different quotes around it, but that's where you're growing. That's where you have that butterfly. That's where you have that, I'm going to do something that might not be understood, but I'm going to do it. So getting uncomfortable and trying things out. So that's a great tip. Sheana, and you think about your career and your bold moves to get where you are. Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yes, so I can draw some parallels actually with Lisa's story. I also started all the way on the bottom. I was going through a divorce at the time. I decided to get married right after my undergrad instead of going to grad school. That is a regret I have. And that marriage didn't last. It was a domestic violence situation and very scary situation that I took myself out of. And after I did that, I had majored in political science. So my aspiration was to go to Capitol Hill and to start working on the Hill. So I started making my way there. And on the way there, I took a temp job in Annapolis, Maryland, which turned into a career for me. I'm the accidental marketer. I fell in love with marketing and my career just blossomed from there on out. I realized that marketing was more of a passion than being in politics. And I had an amazing 11 years at that company where I grew, they invested in me. And I took on a lot of new opportunities. I was always the one kind of raising my hand and saying, I'll do that. I'll volunteer to do that. I'll go there. I'll go to Australia, open up your new office. So a lot of risks and chances that not a lot of others were willing to do that I did. And I think those really paid off. And those are the types of things as you experience them, that adds to your confidence too. So I really think of that, my tenure at that company is really where I grew up in my career.
So your tip would be comfortable with taking risks?
Be comfortable with taking risks. When there are opportunities that come your way, embrace them. Even if you're not comfortable at the onset, even if you're not sure if you can do it.
And I think the other thing here that I don't want to pass up is along your way, you knew you had to get out of a certain situation. You knew you needed to take the needle across the record, so to speak. And like, we need to reset and advocate for yourself, for your safety, for your future.
Yeah.
So I don't want to like pass that up and not highlight that as a major bold move. Young and bold is what I wrote down. So it's essential that you realize that also you're in charge. Like, you can have support from other people, but no one's going to come save you in a way from a situation. And so like, I just want to, shout that out in the sense of like a bold move. I mean, you've been doing that for a long time. And then on top of that, embracing the opportunities, even when they may seem risky or there may just be an unknown to it, is a great tip from a professional standpoint.
Thank you, Lynn.
Sure. All right, Catherine, your journey to where you are now and kind of some of the bold moves that you've made along the way.
I think the first point you made about like the vision you have of what your life is going to be versus what it turns out is not always from the first draft where you end up. I was in grad school and I have a graduate degree in history because I was going to go work in a museum, and that didn't work out so well, mostly because I found out how much they pay to work in a museum. And I was like, I have student loans. So I think what I would like to tell my younger self and what I try and tell my daughter as she's walking through this is that it's okay to have a path and think this is where I'm going to go. But like, sometimes there's a side road, and that side road turns out to be something that could be pretty exciting that you didn't think about. I was working at a medical school while I finished my graduate degree. An investigator got hired and asked for some help. And he's like, you're really good at organization and color coding. Try this out. And I was like, that's healthcare. I don't do that. Right. Like, I didn't take science classes. And he's like, no, let's try it. And it turned out it was something that really lit a passion in me. It's something I care about significantly, and what the impact of what research can do for patients and quality of life that I would never have experienced if it hadn't been for that doctor saying, hey, try this out, and me being like, okay, let's give it a shot. And I think that pivot changed my life, right? So much so that I spent the next 2 decades working in clinical trials. I think the other thing that I would tell advice-wise is similar to what Lucy was talking about, and being able to speak up, even though it's not necessarily presumed to be your place to speak up. I've been at tables with lots of very powerful and influential physicians and executives, and I wasn't always on the equal seat of that table, right? Sometimes I'm in the corner, I'm not even at the table, but I knew an answer, right? And so raise your hand and move past that fear and say what you need to say, because somebody's going to hear it and somebody will accept it. And that's where you start to get the validation of, I'm not just making this up as I go, right? Like, I actually know what I'm talking about. And the more confident you get and the more you exercise that muscle, the easier it is to continue to push those boundaries with other coworkers and other people who may be trying to diminish what you say. I am a woman in a tech world. I am a woman in clinical research. It tends to be very male dominated. Learning to speak out and speak forward from a different perspective is something that I value very much from my career, because if I didn't have that ability, I don't think I would have gotten very far. So those are kind of my path, and my tips for the younger ones is explore the side path and push past the uncomfortableness when you have something you think is truly valuable to contribute.
Those are great tips. Thank you, Catherine. Mike, what are some of the key things that you would give as advice?
Thank you for that question. I come from it from a very authentic, genuine place, just having a lot of experience and just really wanting to share what I would say to my daughter, right? And I think one of the biggest things that I have learned is, especially as a female, is you've got to advocate for yourself. And having, served 2,000 youth, and I have had over 200 millennials on my team, right? And really listening to them and what they're demanding in this world. I see for young people that sometimes they expect things to come to them, and it really worries me. And then another thing is, we live in an unfair world, right? And so even if you know your worth, it's not always going to work out how you expect it. And I think as females, on top of all that, is we must advocate for ourselves. And we cannot assume that people always know either, right? And so asking for that help, or voicing clearly what you want, right? Like right now I'm in transition, so I know what kind of next job I want, but voicing that, connecting with people, and really, really getting out there and advocating for yourself and to fulfill your dream. This is for you is no question key.
Yeah. What advice would you give someone who's like ready to advocate, but a little unsure?
It's really staying true to yourself. Again, it goes back to those dreams, and your worth, right? You know what you want to do. And it really, honestly, it's a maturity moment to realize, like, for most of us, it's not going to just be handed to. So the opportunity is finding mentors or finding people that you can learn for, that you feel safe with and trust, like chief women, for example, to build that confidence inside of you. And again, it may not happen overnight. It may not be an instant thing, and you definitely need to practice, but the absolute truth at the end of the day, and I am definitely a demonstration of example of this going through what I have, is that there are going to be times when people may understand you and may not understand you. And it really comes down to you as an individual, because you are worthy. You are important in this world. You are special and you are unique. And so you can't have always that expectation that people just get you, even your family members, right? So it's just something that you got to learn how to do and practice it for sure.
Excellent. All right, Lucy, your journey to where you are, kind of tell us a little bit about your bold moves and what advice you would give others.
Thank you. So in 1994, I came to this country to study for my master's degree in environmental engineering at UCLA. And after I graduated, my first company professional career I started, it was with a environmental consulting firm as an environmental engineer and then project manager. But 4 years later, so around my age was 30, I changed my career. That's the very first time to move from an environmental consulting firm or engineer to be a data analyst. Eventually, I got a promotion, finance data analysis manager. The reason that I moved my career was, one is I feel that I'm not really good at it, writing a lot of things that communication, because a lot of times that the environmental projects are related to working with environmental protection agencies. So it was not my strong field. I wanted to utilize my uniqueness because I'm really good at math and STEM background, quantitative and analytical. But on top of that, I realized that I needed to study. So I took about 6 months of courses and to acquire the data science kind of field. So that enabled me to jump to a different career. And then fast forward in 2005, I jumped to Wells Fargo to start my journey as a risk manager. I stayed there for 15 years. But then along the year, in 2009, I realized I was voiceless. I passed a lot of promotion opportunities. That's because I had the problem of speaking up and with the communication skills. So I joined the Toastmasters. That's another trajectory. So I decided to improve my leadership and communication skills in 2009. Just think back, 15 years, I was quiet. I was voiceless, right? After coming to this country. And plus, I had really fear because I have the accent. Later on, I realized having a strong accent, it doesn't matter as long as I can convey clearly, I can relate to people. And my story, I like the data to speak, right? That doesn't mean that I would not improve myself. So I joined in 2009 and fast forward now 13 years, I'm still with the Toastmasters because I believe that I can continuously to improve myself, even a little bit every day, but cumulatively, I could really transform myself. So Toastmasters really played a major role in my career advancement. From 2012 to 2019, I got 4 promotions at Wells Fargo. And then 2020, during pandemic, I jumped out of Wells Fargo. I joined this small fintech company. The journey is not that smooth. It's really up and down. But really looking back, I did several bold movements in the past, 20 years or so. I changed my careers several times. And I really throw myself there as a Toastmaster and as someone that I used to stutter. I used to have a lot of failures, but look at me now. I'm more confident And I want to become someone that's really show the testimony that someone that from the start, ground zero, to where I am now. So that's another reason that I'm really passionate about motivating the younger generation.
Yeah. So the journey has ups and downs. It's not all smooth. I think that's something that definitely came out that probably all of us can relate with. And I love the cumulative continual improvement. So knowing that you are becoming your better self every day. And in my opinion, it doesn't stop, no matter what age you are. But you definitely don't have to have it all figured out in this finite time of 18 to 24, which I think, I don't know, all of us, maybe we can relate to needing to have it figured out. And I think there's things that you can explore, taking the side path, like Catherine said, or jumping into something that's unknown, like Lisa and Sheana have done, in that sense of like being open to that, but still staying true to who you are. So it's not easy. Like when you think about all this advice of, from getting uncomfortable to keeping your dreams close to doing some of the things we just talked about and growing and taking risk, it's not easy. So when it feels overwhelming, when you're young, what are some things that we can do to support one another? How can we move through some of those uncomfortable spaces? And I'll just open this up to whoever wants to share a thought there.
I would say look for allies. People, usually when you're 18 to 24, when I think back, boy, I was determined, but I also didn't have that many people who knew what I was thinking. I really was a closed book. And so I wish I had a teacher or a girlfriend who I could talk to, who would encourage me. It's okay, whatever you're thinking or dreaming about, it's okay, and encourage me to just keep going. And I personally didn't have that. I just kind of kept everything inside of me, and I journaled all the time. And it would have been so helpful to have a voice, a human that would just believe in me more so to push me forward. I finally did get those types of people when I entered my first and second jobs. I finally did find that space, those confidence. But at the age of 18, I was just graduating high school, and I really didn't have those people. So I wish I would tell my younger self to look for an ally or two. One is a luxury, two is amazing. But if you can find one or two people who would actually just listen to you, encourage you, make recommendations, that would be a wonderful first step.
Yeah, kind of like your dream checker in a way. Someone who's going to check in on the dreams that you've shared and make sure that they can give you the support and guidance and, and where helpful, the sponsorship to the next step of that dream.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would build off of that and say that I think I had one professor who knew me, knew all the horrible things that was going on in my personal life, and still was like, hey, you're going to get through this. You're a smart kid. Keep going. After that, once you get into the workforce, looking at modeling behaviors that you see that are a positive indicator, there are different types of bosses. And the ones that I feel that I still stick with me to this day are the ones who were always empowering and lifted me up, also gave me critical feedback when I needed it. And then as you start to see that in the workplace, gravitate towards those people and learn as much as you can from them, and then build that into who you are. And then hopefully one day you'll get to a point where you can build that into the next generation beneath you. And then the other thing that I'll throw out there is not every boss is great, right? Like there's some bosses out there that give you real negative experiences. Use those as opportunities to learn what not to do, right? And think about why that didn't resonate for you and how you could do it differently. And take everything as an opportunity to think about how you can learn from people, whether it's positive or negative. There's always something to be gained from that interaction that will build you into a stronger person.
Yeah. I think one thing that stands out there that maybe someone can comment on this afterward is self-awareness. So it sounds like one of the things as I've grown up, and I can still continue to grow up, is that for a very long time, I thought people understood, all the things that happened or all the things that are going on, and very few do. And I think being self-aware, not only of your situations, but also how, people may, perceive your intention as negative when it may be positive. I think the more so that we can do that and become self-aware, it is such a gift, and it helps us really navigate the world that gets really crazy really quick on certain days, especially in some of our roles that we have. And just being able to help others stay kind, stay on track, and still be aligned with who you are. So It's some days are harder than others to do that. But I think one of the things that sounds like you had early on was self-awareness in that, and also being able to navigate the world, knowing that you were going through some things that maybe not everybody realized you were going through. Anyone else want to talk about things that they can do just to get started and be connected with others when all of this may seem overwhelming?
I think the one thing that might get overlooked sometimes is that as much as we probably needed an ally and someone in our lives, just like Bridgette being very self-reliant, sometimes kind of, put you in your own space. But there is always someone who could benefit from you being their ally. And if you can, find those folks that are looking for some support, suddenly you're not focused on yourself, but you're focused on helping others. And that really changes the entire mindset that you have around, your own position and what's going on in your world. And I think it really does help you grow as a person if you can just keep reaching out and looking for others to help as well.
Yeah, kind of that reality check, right? My challenge today, someone would probably want my challenge compared to maybe the world or the challenges that they may have. So, being grateful and having gratitude and helping others is a key way to continue your journey of learning and being able to navigate the world. And it is difficult to be grateful and have gratitude and stressful at the same time. So even thinking just in general how to do that and how you can put that into your schedule, I think is a nice thing to add in there. Anything else anyone want to add?
Yes, Lee. So I'd really like to encourage all listeners and especially young people to vote. The midterms are coming up on November 8th. Take your friends with you, advocate for voting, socialize it on your social media platforms. It's really, really important that you vote. Just for context, in 2016, during the presidential election, almost 24 million young people voted between the ages of 18 and 29. But believe it or not, that only made up 50% of registered voters. So 24 million other young people did not vote. So I can't stress this enough. Please vote.
Yep. So everyone get out there and vote. It is something that it's a privilege and an honor to be able to do. So don't take it lightly, no matter the age. So thank you for that very much. Anything else you'd like to share?
Be curious in this new world. Get your money. Money is a true empowerment tool to help you get to your dreams. So when I say get your money, do your business that you want to do, but value yourself that you are worthy of getting that money, because money is a tool that helps to empower. It's not a negative thing that we're taught in society. It's a beautiful thing. And understand we also have a duty to help the world vote and go where you are loved, and you deserve a good life.
Excellent.
Another thing I want to add on is really having the growth mindset and believe in yourself. One thing that I realize is along the years, I keep on learning. I keep on acquire skills, and I believe that I have the ability to learn and to grow. So remember, I mentioned that I was lack of writing skills, and right now I'm working on my book. I'm writing a book. I believe that I can have the ability. So I keep on pushing myself, acquire new skills. And another example would be that the coaching, right? So I'm a coach. So I'm taking classes for 9 months. I'm going to get my ICF certificate. And also I'm taking psychological fitness classes. So a lot of times that I feel that, okay, I have a lot of energy. I can move forward with this growth mindset. So I hope that for younger generation, just believe in yourself. You do have the capability.
Yeah. So knowing that, again, going back to that, you said it so nicely, cumulative continual improvement going forward and leaning into really some of the unknown, but knowing that you're going to learn in the unknown as well. So I really appreciate everyone's tips and being able to share their journey of being bold and some of the things that you've done to be at this point in your career and continue to grow and be bolder as we get older. I think important for everyone to hear is that the Young Chief Coalition is doing 2 more information sessions where you can connect in and meet others on December 1st and January 12th. Down below is all the information of how to sign up for that. We hope you come. And you'll not only meet chiefs like you've heard today, but other chiefs who are here and ready to share their journey and support you in yours. So Thank you, everyone, for sharing your bold journey with us today on the Lounge. Welcome to the Bold Lounge podcast. My name is Lee Burgess, and I will be your host. If you're anything like me, you love hearing inspiring stories of people who have gone on bold journeys and made a positive impact in the world. This podcast is all about those kinds of stories. Every week, we'll hear from someone who has taken the leap or embarked on an extraordinary journey. In addition to hearing their stories, we'll also learn about their bold growth mindset that they use to make things happen. Whether they faced challenges or doubts along the way, they persisted and ultimately achieved their goals. These impactful stories will leave you feeling motivated and inspired to pursue your own bold journey. I believe everyone has a bold story waiting to be freed. Tune in and get ready to be inspired.